tribulations, my heart, my balls, my somebody stop me, somebody come and get me. Little did I know that the Lord was riding with me. The law, the light, my heart, the fight, the wrong, the right is gone.
Welcome back to another JVS movie review from the Tribeca Film Festival. Now, this film here was interesting from the beginning because the little picture I had of a little girl with a dragon breathing fire out of her mouth seemed interesting. I didn't know what the film was going to be about. And then getting into the film, I was at times blown away, at other times thoroughly confused about what I was watching. But in the end, I got to see two amazing performances. And this one is called Blaze. And here's a quick synopsis. After accidentally witnessing a violent crime, a young girl is left catatonic with shock and struggles to make sense of what she saw, ultimately finding renewal in a world of her own imagination. And this one is directed by Kathryn Barton. It stars Simon Baker as Luke and Julia Savage as Blaze. Now, first things first. The performances from Mr. Baker and Julia Savage are great. Julia Savage, who plays Blaze, the main kid here, and Simon Baker, who plays her father, their interaction with one another as father and daughter are great, as we see Blaze struggling to deal with the point that she witnessed a violent rape and violent murder, and her having to deal with witnessing that, being a young girl, and the ramifications behind that. When you see those two acting together, or when you just see Julia acting on her own, it's amazing. It's something that I think more films should try to deal with, and that's dealing with children and their trauma, and not necessarily their trauma dealing for things that happen directly to them, but the trauma of them witnessing things that at a young age you would hope the kids never have to see. And that really works wonders for this film. Where the film can veer off a little bit is when Blaze creates this imaginal world around herself of this dragon who's protecting her from having to talk about what happened, as she is the hero of her own world, as we see constant flashbacks of this incident happening and how in her mind she's reimagining it to be something else, to be more beautiful, to try to pull things out of this traumatic experience that she's going through. At that points in times with the film, it becomes trippy. A little, for some people, possibly a little too trippy, because you may get confused exactly what's happening here when this type of stuff happened, because it's not at times a seamless transition from the real world that Blaze is in to the world that she's created for herself to feel more protected, more at home, more comfortable with everything else. But when we get back to the real world and we have to deal with Blaze and her dad, it is great. Simon Baker's amazing here as her father. And again, Julia she pulls no punches as this kid, who we clearly see is struggling with everything that's happening. She's clearly breaking down. At earlier stages in the film, she doesn't even talk anymore. Like, it happened and it completely it just destroyed her world. And it's heartbreaking when you see that happening. But then when she does open up, partially in therapy, partially with her dad, you see just the anger and frustration of this kid who feels, I could have done something. But at the same time, understanding this isn't a child, and not like a late teenage child. This is a preteen kid who's having to deal with all of this stuff and witnessing one of the most brutal things anyone at any age level could ever have to sit and watch, and just how that affects her. And when you get the relationship between her and her dad, it is amazing. Everything, just the performance of them two, it comes across as so real, so amazing, so great. Again, the only time that the film can really throw you off is when we get into the trippy stuff of it all. But it's a couple of films that it reminded me of when we got to the trippy elements of it. One, I can't think of the name off the top of my head, is a film with Hugh Jackman years ago where it felt the same way in a trippy type of feel to it. Heath Ledger did another film, The Imagination of, I can't remember the name of it, but it's the same thing. It's a very trippy vibe to the film, but we understand the reason why that vibe is created is because she's attempting to protect herself. And then when we transition from her protecting herself right back into the real world, and we're seeing that protection, this dragon who she's created to help her cope with everything, including a trial that has to take place, and her being the only witness to what happens on it. We get this amazingly powerful scene of Julia's character Blaze being on a school bus, and her seeing off of the school bus the guy who raped and killed someone, and she loses it. I completely loses it. The screaming, the yelling. She's banging her head on the glass on the bus as she's starting to bleed, and the glass is starting to break. And we see, for me, that it just came across to remind you, like, this is a kid that went through this traumatic thing, and she feels like there's nothing I can do to fix it. And this man has now become a monster to her. And that's where all the imagination and everything that was created, it was created to protect her because of that reason. This movie works amazingly well when it focuses on that. When you get to the trivia elements, I know people are going to be thrown off by it, but if you can just not be completely lost at times, because at times it just comes out of the blue when you get to those elements. If you can attempt to follow it a little bit, I think you're going to get just a movie that is great in dealing with trauma. And kind of will remind people that, like, as children, you're going to always come back into yourself, even more than adults do. As a kid, you're going to go revert back to yourself, back into yourself. You're going to create a world where you feel comfortable in. And through that comfortability, we see Blaze attempt to open up, but we still see that there are other issues that she's not dealing with. And Simon Baker's character in it is so helpless in attempting to help his daughter on so many instances. And he's just always there for her. So it's never a thing where he even gets overly frustrated with her. It's like, I'm just here. I'm here till you're ready to talk. The father-daughter relationship in this film is amazing. The visionary, imaginative aspects they use to show us what that trauma looks like in this girl's life is also something amazing. Something I think people are going to really, really love. This is a film that its importance lies in how it deals with trauma and how people can deal with trauma, and how you always need to be there for people when they're dealing with trauma, or for people who may be going through something. You just got to stick with them so you can find out exactly what they're going through. And that's what happens with this film. So, Blaze, again, brought to you by the Tribeca Film Festival. I'm not sure if this film has distribution yet, because I have not seen anything that has been picked up yet, but I'm 1,000% sure it's going to be picked up by somebody. And I'm almost 100% sure whoever picks this up may attempt to give this film some type of award season run, because it could definitely win some, especially for young Julia Savage, who's great in this film. Out of a possible 10, I'm going to give Blaze a 9 out of 10. This is really good. Extremely good. And it's definitely something that on first watch, you may be confused. Give it some time. Once you start thinking about it and you see the tricks, the imagery that's pulled off, and how it pertains to dealing with trauma, I think you're going to be blown away by the film, along with blown away by the great performance of Simon Baker and Julia Savage as father and daughter that comes across as being so realistic in this film. I think you'll love it. This has been another JVS movie review brought to you from the Tribeca Film Festival. Peace, people.